Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating, ancient, but incredibly practical curriculum for transforming our chaotic everyday thoughts into a deeply disciplined mind. The source material we're looking at provides this amazing step-by-step framework for taking our absolute mental agitation and turning it into profound tranquility. Let's get right into it.
Here is our map of the mind for today. 1. Taming the wild mind. 2. Walking the path. 3. The Universal Dhamma. 4. Sila, morality in action. And finally, 5. Samadhi, mastering the mind. All right, Section 1, Taming the Wild Mind, the challenge of an agitated intellect.
If you've ever sat down to focus on a task or just tried to find a quiet moment of peace, you know this problem intimately. The state of our own minds can be completely chaotic. The source material uses some really vivid sensory language to describe our daily consciousness. It actually calls it a monkey mind that's just endlessly grasping from one branch to another, from object to object. It compares this untamed mind to a wild, agitated elephant loose inside a human dwelling, creating absolute havoc and danger. It's this infirm, unstable, and deeply agitated force that we're dealing with.
Naturally, that brings us to the core dilemma, right? How on earth do we train something so powerful and deeply agitated without just getting entirely frustrated and angry ourselves? Well, the source points out that a wise, experienced trainer doesn't get angry at the wild elephant. If you get irritated just because your mind won't focus after a few days of trying, you're really just making the mind more agitated. You have to work patiently, persistently, and continuously. And the amazing thing is, when that wild strength is finally tamed, it transitions from being your greatest danger to your absolute greatest asset.
Moving on to Section 2, Walking the Path, the limits of intellectual understanding. To figure out how we actually tame this wild elephant, the source shares a brilliant anecdote about the Buddha, which acts as a powerful mirror for us as learners. The story goes that a student comes to the Buddha super frustrated. He asks why, despite the Buddha's great teachings, some people become fully liberated and peaceful while others remain exactly as they were. In response, the Buddha asks the man about his hometown, Rajgiri. The man confirms he knows the exact path from where they are to Rajgiri perfectly, literally every single turn. But the Buddha points out, even with perfect directions, nobody arrives in Rajgiri just by listening to the instructions.
So the crucial point here is that intellectual understanding alone simply doesn't work. The Buddha says nobody will take you on his shoulder to the final goal. Think about it. If you're thirsty, watching someone else drink water isn't going to quench your thirst, right? You have to do the hard experiential work of actually taking every single step yourself.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Universal Dhamma, moving beyond sectarian dogma.
If we have to walk the path ourselves, what exactly does that look like? Well, the text draws a very sharp line between sectarian religion and universal Dhamma. You see, sectarian religion often gets bogged down in external appearances. Who wears what robe, who uses which rosary, or who performs specific outward rites and ceremonies. Universal Dhamma, on the other hand, is strictly about the objective universal law of nature. It is a fundamental truth that applies to everyone, totally regardless of their external beliefs, and it is focused entirely on the internal, experiential purification of the mind. By bypassing all that traditional religious baggage, this curriculum defines sin in an incredibly practical, universal way. Sin is simply any action, physical or vocal, that hurts or harms others. And why? Because doing so immediately harms you. The source makes it crystal clear. You cannot steal or harm someone without first generating tremendous internal negativity, like greed, anger, or animosity. You literally punish yourself with a hellfire of agitation the exact moment you generate those feelings.
Conversely, piety isn't about reciting specific prayers or holding specific philosophical dogmas. It's fundamentally about wholesome actions that foster peace and harmony for others. When you act in a way that supports the peace of others, it brings you immediate internal tranquility because it perfectly aligns with the law of nature. You experience the kingdom of heaven within yourself, right here, right now.
Let's dive into Section 4, Sila, morality in action, the foundation of a disciplined mind.
Now that we know the objective, how do we practically start building this tranquility? The overarching path is broken down into a macro journey of 3 sequential steps. It starts with Sila, which is morality. This acts as the absolute baseline foundation for step 2, Samadhi, which is mental concentration. And mastering that concentration eventually leads to step 3, Pana, which is deep experiential wisdom. And remember, you cannot skip steps.
Let's look closely at Sila. It's essentially moral conduct divided into 3 pillars. First, right speech, abstaining from lies, harsh words, or backbiting that ruins friendships. Second, right action, not killing, stealing, or using intoxicants, mostly because intoxicants make you a slave to your mind and lead you to break all the other rules anyway. And third, right livelihood, earning an honest living without harming others. The source provides a striking example here. Imagine a doctor who secretly wishes for an epidemic just to get more patients, or a businessman who roots for a famine or war just because it drives up consumer prices. If your livelihood or motivation encourages harm to others, you are failing at Sila.
There's a really powerful central metaphor for Sila here. The text asks, if you ignite a fire all around you by lying, cheating, and causing disharmony, how can you possibly expect coolness and tranquility within yourself? You simply cannot cultivate internal peace if your outward actions are constantly lighting fires in your community.
Section 5. Samadhi, Mastering the Mind. The transition from gross to subtle reality.
So, once we stop lighting those outward fires through Sila, we can finally turn our focus inward to Samadhi, which begins with right effort. The source tells us to treat the mind just like a weak dangling muscle that needs specific, structured exercises to get healthy. There are 4 mental exercises to do this. First, examine your mind and rid it of existing negative voices or impurities. Second, close the doors to ensure new impurities don't enter. Third, preserve and multiply the virtues you already have. And fourth, open the gates to welcome new virtues that you currently lack. Next comes right awareness. And honestly, this is a massive shift. True awareness cannot be rooted in memories of the past because the past is gone. It can't be rooted in imaginations or dreams of the future either. Right awareness requires pulling your focus entirely into the physical reality of the present moment, exactly as it manifests, without trying to change it. This leads us to a fascinating, highly specific technique called choiceless observation. To develop intense concentration, you're instructed to maintain your focus on a tiny, specific area of the body, like the small triangle above your upper lip and around your nostrils. You don't imagine a god, you don't repeat a verbal mantra. Instead, you simply witness the real biochemical and electromagnetic reality happening right there, in that small space, without craving a good sensation or having an aversion to a bad one. As you focus intensely on that one small area, your mind sharpens up immensely. You'll start to feel incredibly visceral sensations, the slight temperature difference of your breath, heat, cold, itching, a throbbing pulse, maybe even numbness or moisture. The golden rule here? Just neutrally observe them. If it itches, you do not scratch it. You just observe the reality of the itch, knowing that, like absolutely everything in nature, it will eventually pass away.
By strictly limiting your focus to this tiny area and simply observing without reacting, your concentration becomes laser sharp. It's a progression. You transition from perceiving your body as just a gross, solidified, apparent reality to actually feeling the incredibly subtle, constant biochemical flow of your own physical structure. You literally begin to experience the constant flux of mind and matter on a deeply experiential level.
Ultimately, the source material we've explored in this explainer gives us the complete map. It shows you exactly how to move from a wild, elephant-like mind to a profoundly disciplined, tranquil one through morality, concentration, and objective observation. But, as the Buddha reminded the traveler from Rajgiri, having the perfect directions means absolutely nothing if you refuse to take the journey yourself. So, the question I'll leave you with is this. You know the path. Will you take the first step?